Hi, James.
Hi, how are
Good
you?
to have you on today's episode. I'm Belinda, and we're going to be talking about the California Consumer Privacy Act. And this came into effect a few months ago, and it's
June.
actually going to be, when is it going to be? When is
So,
it going to take
so
effect?
businesses have to be compliant by January 1st,
Okay.
2020.
It's possible.
Enforcement of the law has been extended um, to July. So
July.
July is when they're going to really start enforcing it.
Okay.
But still, the date that you're supposed to be compliant is January 1st,
January 1st. So it was
2020.
passed in June 2018, and then it's going to take effect January
Yep.
2020.
Mhm.
Okay, so one thing that I've heard, on the grapevine, is that there are organizations that are saying, we are GDPR compliant, and this is like a mini GDPR. And do we really need to get involved in this thing? What's your take on it?
Well, I would say if you're confident that your business is compliant with GDPR, it's most likely that you're going to be compliant with the California Privacy Act. But there are a few wrinkles, and it's not everything is completely the same. For one thing, this law only applies to businesses that sell to California residents.
How do we know who's a resident of
Yeah.
California?
Okay. That's a good question. So basically, to qualify as a California resident is that it deals with your intention. If you are living in California and you intend to stay there and make that as your home, that you are considered a California resident by law.
Okay.
So if I'm just in Texas for 3 months doing an internship
Right.
or something like that, just there for temporary, but I'm always intending to return to California, I would be covered by that law, even though I'm
Wow.
still in Texas.
Okay.
So when I go to if I was a California consumer and I was buying a product or signing up for a website, even though I'm in Texas, they might have a checkbox that says, "Are you a California resident?" I would check the box, and they might have to send me to a different privacy agreement.
Obviously.
So yeah, it's basically if you intend to stay there and live there, you're a California resident.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, and the definition is explained in the law, and you can look it up. But yeah, there's a little bit more to it, but the intention is what really matters.
Okay. And so what happens if businesses don't comply?
So that's a good question because the California Attorney General has to develop regulations and the enforcement measures. Really, and they'll develop the fines and things like that for non-compliance, and we just don't know what those are yet.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions that we're just gonna have to wait and see. Really, one of the only enforcement terms that's really spelled out in the law is the data breach. The, uh, the right for a consumer to sue a company that had a data breach and experienced damages. There is a fixed term. It's basically from $350 to $750
Per occurrence.
per customer,
Cool.
basically. So this is a whole nother story. But
Right.
if you're a company that maybe there's data breach and affected 1 million customers, 1 million times $750 that's $750 million. So
Yeah,
so
that's a lot.
that's an unrealistic
Right,
fine.
right,
So
right.
those things are going to have to be ironed out when the California Attorney General releases
Okay.
their
So,
regulations.
so what can businesses do now that this law has been passed? What can they do? Because they've got some time, to take action and get prepared. What can you give us just two tips on what they can do?
Well, the easiest one is it's always just be aware of it and start send emails to people in your organization just explaining here's a new California law that we're going to have to follow because almost every business in the U.S. has some touch in California because
Right.
it's our largest state. So
Right.
so everyone's going to have to deal with this, and so just getting the word out. And then otherwise, I would say start looking now at your privacy terms and your notices and statements that you have on your website and the processes you have in place. The certain rights that the law gives, I think can be easily just you can write a new policy in a day
Okay.
and to get it figured out. Some of them aren't too complicated. Some are more complicated than others. And if you're already on the way to GDPR compliance, you got a good head start.
Good. Okay.
So keep
Okay.
take solace in that.
Okay. So listen, you have a good head start, and does that mean, on a final note, does that mean that because an organization is GDPR compliant, they really shouldn't put too much emphasis on the California Consumer Privacy Act, or what do they need to do on the final note?
I would say if you're GDPR compliant, you don't have to do much more. However, with your privacy statement, I would probably tailor one to specifically California residents. And yeah, just go. I have a feeling that more and more states are going to start passing these types of laws on their own. So I would just kind of start writing the new statements that you have to for California. But just keep in mind, you're probably going to have to write a few more over the next few years. So.
Okay. Thank you, James. That's it, guys. Until next time. Thank you.